Welcome to our recap video of the critically acclaimed film, Joker. We invite you to join us on this unforgettable journey as we relive the intense and captivating story of one of the greatest comic book villains of all time. But we don't want you to miss out on any of our content, so we urge you to subscribe and enable notifications so that you never miss an update from our channel. So don't miss out on the chance to experience Joker's raw emotions, power, and unforgettable moments. Subscribe now, and let's explore Gotham City together. The story takes place in 1981 in Gotham City. Arthur Fleck is a clown for hire for the company Ha Ha's. He suffers from severe depression himself, but finds solace in performing for others and making people laugh. He's been tasked with promoting a store by dancing and waving a sign around. On one such occasion, a group of punk teenagers steals the sign, forcing Arthur to pursue them into an alley. They smash the sign against his face and then kick him mercilessly while he's down. Gotham City is struggling with crime, unemployment, and poverty in this era. Arthur sees a social worker about his medication and ongoing mental health issues. A small child looks at Arthur on the bus ride home. He makes amusing faces at the boy, but his mother tells him to leave him alone. Arthur begins to laugh uncontrollably and hysterically. When his mother confronts him, he hands her a card explaining that he has a mental condition that causes him to laugh in this manner. Arthur returns home to a high-rise apartment complex with his ailing mother, Penny. They sit down after dinner to watch a TV talk show hosted by Murray Franklin. Arthur fantasizes about appearing on the show and capturing Murray's attention. Arthur charms the audience and Murray in his fantasy by telling them that he looks after his mother. Murray connects with Arthur and invites him up on stage in front of everyone to share a familial embrace. Penny used to work for Thomas Wayne and is obsessed with the millionaire, and she is currently writing to him to try to improve their living situation. After hearing about the mugging, Arthur's coworker Randall provides him with a gun for protection. Because firearms are prohibited at work, Arthur is both hesitant and relieved to receive such a gift, but he soon gains confidence after receiving the weapon. Soon after, he is confronted by his cold and unfeeling boss, who chastises him for losing the sign and deducts the cost from his pay. Arthur only responds with a bitter smile. Arthur meets and falls in love with one of his neighbors, Sophie Demond, a single mother. She speaks to him politely about issues to which he can relate. However, while attempting to make an impression on her, he appears awkward and strange in her presence. He spends his day following her at one point. Later, she comes by his apartment and asks if he was following her, to which he admits, but she doesn't seem bothered. He invites her to a stand-up comedy show at which he will be performing. She is hesitant at first, but his charm and sense of humor win her over. Arthur watches comedians perform to gain an understanding of the craft, but he feels more awkward and out of place because his exaggerated laughter is not genuine. Arthur attends his performance at the comedy club. His anxiety consumes him, and as a coping mechanism, he finds himself laughing so hard that he can barely speak. He then launches into his routine, which isn't particularly amusing. Sophie appears to be in the audience, and she appears to be the only one laughing at Arthur's jokes. This gives him the comfort he needs to keep joking despite his inner turmoil. Later, Arthur visits a children's hospital to entertain the patients as a clown. He brought his gun, which he drops on the floor. Arthur's boss later chastises him for this. Arthur begs his boss for a second chance, but he refuses and fires him on the spot. To top it all off, Randall accuses Arthur of having obtained the gun on his own. Arthur notices three drunk young Wall Street types working for Wayne Enterprises harassing a woman on the subway train ride home from Ha Ha's in full clown costume. Arthur begins to laugh unintentionally, attracting the attention of the men, while the woman wisely flees the car. Before they begin to beat Arthur, the men mock him and his laughter. Arthur fights back in self-defense. Arthur then pulls out his gun and shoots two of them in self-defense before following the last guy out of the train and murdering him on the stairs. Arthur withdraws into a nearby public men's room, stunned by what he has just done. He finds a force rising within him after a moment of frantic contemplation, and he begins to dance by himself. At this point, he looks at himself in the smudged mirror and sees himself as a battered and smeared yet powerful clown. He starts to embrace this image of himself. He hides the gun and returns to the apartment building. The news of the three murders spreads, with some viewing it as a targeted attack on the wealthy, while others applaud the act. Thomas Wayne speaks up and condemns it, referring to the lower classes as clowns, a symbol they readily embrace. Arthur cleans out his locker at Ha Ha's the next day, but not before confronting Randall about betraying him and breaking the time punching machine. He then walks away, exhilarated and liberated. According to news reports, clown rioters are causing havoc in the city while condemning the more affluent. Arthur realizes he has inadvertently caused this and begins to see his true potential, which makes him ecstatic. Arthur later discovers one of Penny's letters to Thomas, indicating that he is Thomas's son. Arthur visits Wayne Manor and meets young Bruce Wayne. He sticks his hands through the gate and forces Bruce to smile after performing a magic trick for him, realizing deep within that they may or may not be brothers. Alfred, on the other hand, arrives to intervene and tell Arthur to leave. Arthur brings up his mother and her relationship with Thomas. Alfred asserts that he does remember Penny, but that she lied to him about who she was. Arthur attacks Alfred through the bars and nearly strangles him, but he notices Bruce watching. Arthur then takes control of himself and flees the Wayne property. That evening, Arthur runs into Thomas at a public art theater performance. Arthur enters the theater disguised as an usher. After following Thomas Wayne into a men's room, he makes an attempt to confront Thomas Wayne about the possibility that he is his biological father. Arthur mentions Penny, whom Thomas recalls. While Thomas admits that Penny used to work for him as part of his housekeeping staff, he believes she was delusional and that Arthur cannot be his son. Thomas also claims Penny never told Arthur he was adopted, which Arthur strongly denies before bursting out laughing in Thomas's face. Unaware of Arthur's condition, Thomas becomes defensive and punches him in the face before throwing him out of the building. In a fit of depression and longing, Arthur returns home and tortures himself by slamming his head on the refrigerator. The next day, two police detectives, Burke and Garrity, go to Arthur's apartment to question him about the subway murders because they heard the suspect was wearing clown makeup and Arthur had lost his job the day before. Arthur denies any wrongdoing and orders the detectives to leave. Penny becomes ill and is hospitalized not long after. Sophie sits next to Arthur as he cares for his mother. Arthur notices that Murray's TV show is playing a clip from his stand-up routine in the hospital, but he is disappointed to see that Murray only played it to mock Arthur. A representative for Murray's show later calls Arthur. Arthur reluctantly accepts an invitation to appear as a guest. After reviewing the content of previous interviews on the comedy show, Arthur comes to the conclusion that it would be hilarious for him to take his own life in front of the live audience. Arthur travels to Arkham Asylum in search of concrete evidence, where he meets with a clerk named Carl who is in charge of Penny's case file. When Carl tells Arthur that he can't give him the information he wants, Arthur grabs the file and runs away so that he can read it in private. After he has gotten away and is hiding out in a stairwell, Arthur opens the documents and reads them, and he discovers that Thomas was telling the truth. According to the documents, the truth of the matter is that Penny adopted Arthur after she found him abandoned as a baby, and she proceeded to abuse him by beating him, tying him to a radiator, and otherwise mistreating him alongside her abusive boyfriend. Arthur was mentioned in the file as having a head injury, which is most likely what caused his laughing condition. When Arthur gets back to the hospital, he tells Penny that he used to think his life was a tragedy, but now he realizes that it's actually a fucking comedy. Penny is killed as a result of him using this method. After Arthur gets back to his house, he decides to burglarize Sophie's apartment. She recognizes him and immediately feels terrified, pleading with him to leave so that she can protect her daughter. Arthur inquires as to whether or not she has ever experienced what he refers to as a really bad day. She tells him that she doesn't even know who he is. It becomes clear as a result of this that every other instance involving Sophie was merely an illusion created by Arthur in his head. Arthur, now broken and frustrated, apologizes for his intrusion into Sophie's life and then storms out of her apartment, leaving her to be by herself. To get ready for his appearance on Murray's show, Arthur starts by painting his face white to get into character. Randall and another former coworker, a dwarf named Gary, pay a visit to him at his apartment. They express their condolences after learning of Penny's passing, but Randall then starts talking about Burke and Garrity coming to their apartments to question them about the murders in the subways. This prompts them to withdraw their condolences. After Arthur comes to the realization that Randall is only looking for a way to use him in order to cover his own butt, Arthur loses his cool and viciously stabs Randall twice in the face before slamming his head against the wall. Gary, who is in a state of extreme fear, begins to question Arthur's actions and begs to be released. This is something that Arthur readily concedes before proceeding to frighten him in jest. Gary makes an effort to unlock Arthur's door but is unable to do so due to the height difference between them. He requests that Arthur open the door for him, to which Arthur immediately agrees, pausing only briefly to express his gratitude to Gary for being the only person in his life who was kind to him. After giving Gary a peck on the cheek and a kiss on the forehead, Arthur releases him. As soon as the show starts, Arthur exits the building. He then awkwardly tells Murray a joke which he finds funny despite the fact that nobody else understands the dark humor in it. After being confronted with this information, Arthur continues by confessing to having committed the murders in the subway. The audience and Murray eventually come to the conclusion that Arthur is being serious. Arthur contends that the only reason the audience cares about the victims is because Thomas Wayne spoke for them, but that anyone else, including himself, would be ignored and walked over. Arthur's frustration with Murray and the audience, as well as his own, increases throughout the show. After Murray has reprimanded Arthur, the situation has escalated to the point where Arthur has snapped and is now telling another joke while grinning gleefully. What do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that abandons and treats him like trash? He wonders, only for Murray to cut him off before calling the cops. After that, Arthur becomes enraged and screams, "You get what you fucking deserve," before blowing Murray's brains out in front of everyone. The audience flees in panic, and the announcement of the murder is broadcast over the airwaves as soon as it happens. After that, Arthur lets out an authentic chuckle for the very first time in his life. As a result of the citizens of Gotham learning about what Arthur did, the city is currently being overrun by rioters dressed as clowns. The Wayne family emerges from a movie theater to discover mayhem on the surrounding streets. Thomas leads his wife Martha and Bruce into an alley, but a clown follows them and tells Thomas that he is getting what he deserves, using a punchline from Arthur's Murray Franklin show. After saying that, he pulls out his gun and kills Thomas and Martha in front of Bruce. In the meantime, Arthur has been detained by the authorities, and they are taking him away. Arthur laughs gleefully as he looks out the window and sees the devastation and chaos he has caused. The clowns in the ambulance then crash into the car, killing the cops and releasing Arthur, who is injured and unconscious. When Arthur awakens, he is surrounded by a horde of cheering mobsters in clown masks. The rioters then applaud Arthur as he stands on a car, embracing their admiration now that he has received the recognition he has long sought. He dances to their applause before pausing to notice that his nose is bleeding profusely. He then grins and spreads the blood across his upper lip before standing before them, elevated like a god. Arthur is eventually imprisoned in Arkham Asylum. After telling this story, he laughs and imagines a young Bruce standing over his parents in the alley. Arthur laughs again, realizing that he has, in a way, transformed Bruce into himself. He meets a new social worker and attempts to tell her a joke, but she doesn't understand it. A few minutes later, Arthur exits the room, leaving a trail of bloody footprints behind him before being pursued by orderlies. Thanks for watching. If you love movies and want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe. Till then, see you on the next video.